Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it is for you. Welcome back to another Division 2 video. The new league has started and this is a perfect time to show you the top 3 best league, aka speedrun builds out there. There are a bunch of them out there and these are, in my opinion, the best builds to use. And I got a build for everybody. If you are a skill build player, I got you. If you like to be in their faces running and gunning, I got you. Or if you want to be a little bit more in the background shooting with your marksman rifle, I got you. These 3 builds will help you boost yourself through the league and not having to worry about that timer. So, let's get right into it. And to get it started, the first build I'm going to showcase is the Eclipse Fire Starter. This is one of the fan favorites within the status effects build, and this will help you run through every single league mission out there. Starting with our specialization, Firewall. Why Firewall? For the extra 20% burn duration. For our guns, we are using the Lady Death. And why the Lady Death? Because this will give us that extra 20% movement speed whenever we take somebody out. So still make sure that you still shoot on your enemies with that Lady Death, as that will kick in that 20% movement speed, letting you fly through those missions. Secondary gun and the pistol don't really matter because it's all about the status effects. Doesn't matter if they are far away from you, you can fire your skills all the way across a map or all the way across to a different balcony. So it doesn't really matter what you run on your secondary or on your pistol. Then to the overview of the build. For our mask, we are using the exotic skill mask, the Val mask. This will give us status effect, hazard protection, and I chose to go for a skill haste mod. And why this mask? Because this comes with toxic delivery. Status effect also apply damage over time debuff for 10 seconds. And the total damage dealt is equal to 50% of your concussion grenade damage and increases by your status effect attributes. So make sure that you have the attribute status effect on most or all your pieces of gear. Then jumping over to my holster, we went for Golem. Why Golem? Because this will give you an extra 10% status effect. And again, roll status effects and skill haste on there, or find it with skill haste and status effects on there, because the core attribute is still armor with Golem. You need to find it with the right attributes to roll that skill tier over the armor core. And then jumping over to the gear set that we are using, and yes, of course, we are using Eclipse. Why Eclipse? This will give us 15% status effect and at 15% skill haste. The 30% hazard protection doesn't really do that much for us. Maybe if you set yourself on fire, that will come in clutch, but most of the time it doesn't really matter that much. And we are of course doing it for that 4-piece activation of the indirect transmission. Your status effects now spread on kill to all enemies within 10 meters and refresh 50% of the duration. Because we're running around with that chest and that backpack piece, this will be boosted quite a lot. And for the chest piece, this will increase indirect transmission range from 10 to 50 meters and refresh percentage from 50% to 75%. And this is a must-have on this, just like our backpack. The backpack of Eclipse will give us some extra damage as well, and it is quite a lot. As you can see, amplifies all damage you deal to status affected targets by 30%. And this is all damage, not only from your gun, but also from the skills that we are using on this build. And that's why you kinda wanna go for the backpack and the chest piece at the same time for this build. For all of the pieces, like I mentioned before, you want to focus on the attribute status effect, and if you can add a mod to that piece of gear, always choose to go for skill haste. As you can see, my gloves will have status effects on there, my knee pads will have status effects on there, and then what you probably already noticed is that my chest piece will have status effects on there as well. And of course, because it has a mod slot, we're adding that 12% skill haste. And then jumping over to the most important two pieces of this build, and that are of course your skills. We are running around with the sticky bomb. This is the fire sticky bomb. This will apply burn status effect on affected targets and will have almost 13% duration because we are at tier 6 skill tier. And then jumping over to the second skill, or in my humble opinion, the main skill that I preferably use, and that is the fire starter chem launcher. And again, applies burn status effect on affected targets. This will have a burn duration of 13 seconds, and whenever somebody dies, throughout our eclipse and throughout our Val mask, it will jump over and do even more damage. And a few tips for this build: if you know where the spawn points are, make sure that you shoot your cam launcher or of course your burn sticky towards that entrance. The more people you group up, the more people will be hurt by that fire, and it's easier to jump over to all the rest of their enemies because they will definitely run away from each other. If you start them on fire, you will take out that complete area in seconds. And that's pretty much the first build I wanted to showcase to you. So let's jump over to our run and gun build, and in my opinion, one of my favorites for this league. And that's of course our beloved run and gun Hunter's Fury build. Starting with our specialization, we are using the gunner specialization. Why? Because this will give us 10% armor on kill, giving us a little bit more survivability, and that third reload is faster. Again, I chose to go for the Lady Death. And then the secondary weapon will be that M1A. The Lady Death, why? Again, because this is just a great weapon to be in their faces, and you will gain that extra 20% movement speed when you take somebody out. You want to be fast in the league. That Lady Death is one of the best guns to run around with. For my secondary, I chose to go for the classic M1A. I rolled Ranger on there. And why? Because there are still people you need to shoot from a distance. For example, take Grand Washington Hotel. If you run through that non-invaded, you will always have to take somebody out on the other balcony, and you can't really hit them with that Lady Death or not do that much damage. And then I whip out my classic M1A, I just shoot them down and we can go further. So the classic M1A is only used on this build whenever we can't really do damage with our Lady Death, as it's too far away from us. Then jumping over to, of course, the overview of the build, as the pistol doesn't really matter. Make sure to put a pistol there that you don't have proficient yet to save yourself some materials and or some duplicates to donate. Starting with my chest piece, we went for Seska. And why Seska? Because of course this will give us an extra 10% crit chance. Everything rolled on this will be crit chance, crit damage mon on there, and we chose to go for Obliterate. Critical hits increase total weapon damage by 1% for 10 seconds and stacks up 25 times. And for my backpack, I chose to go for the named backpack, the Liquid Engineer, to give us a lot of survivability. Yes, you can go for some damage output as well, but in my humble opinion, it's not really needed, especially not running around in the leagues. Again, you want to aim towards critical hit chance and critical hit damage. I found it with weapon handling on there, so it's still decent, but I would love to see some crit chance on there. And why this Liquid Engineer? Because it comes with perfect Bloodsucker. Killing an enemy adds and refreshes stack of 12% bonus armor for 10 seconds, and the max stack is 10, up to that 120% bonus armor, keeping you alive in whatever situation you are in. And then the rest of the build, as you already saw and you can guess, it is Hunter's Fury. Why Hunter's Fury? This will boost our SMG damage. This will give us some extra health on kill and armor on kill. but again, we're doing it for that 4-piece Apex Predator. Enemies within 15 meters receive a debuff, amplifying your weapon damage against them by 20%. Killing a debuffed enemy with your weapon disorients other enemies within 5 meters and amplifies weapon damage by 5% for 10 seconds, stacking up 5 times. You can do so much damage with this, and of course I will have some tips after we went over this full build. Again, we went for crit damage and or crit chances. Make sure that you always build toward that 55 to 60% crit chance before you dive into critical hit damage. Hold critical hit damage on there and the critical hit damage mod. Same as for all the other pieces. I rolled critical hit damage on there, and of course then that weapon damage. Knee pads the same, critical hit damage, and you already guessed it, for our gloves we went for critical hit damage as well. We can go over the stats real quick. As you can see, we have 57% crit chance, 158% crit damage. And that's what you kinda wanna aim for when you go for this build. If we jump back, we can still talk about, of course, our skills. We have our Reviver Hive active because you can still get taken out if you run around with it full red build, although that perfect bloodsucker keeps you alive. But just to be sure, if you like to play solo, I will kinda always wanna go for that Revive Hive. And my favorite skill out there will be the Riot Foam. And why? Especially with this build. And that's again the first tip that I can give you. If you know where they're spawning, if you notice where they're spawning, make sure that you have your cam launcher, your Riot Foam ready, and foam them. They will be close to each other, they will be grouped up. And if you take somebody out, everybody else will be disoriented, giving you more damage output. And of course, because they are disoriented, they will not shoot you. So next to that you can easily take them out, it's also a survivability aspect because they will not aggro you whenever they are, of course, riot foamed and or disoriented throughout our Hunter's Fury gear set. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the second build. We will fly through there and go to the last build and show you one of the fan favorites overall in the game. And that is of course the Hotshot Determined build. This will still do a lot of damage, and you can still run through everything, because we all know if you shoot that first headshot and you have that first headshot, it doesn't matter where you hit your enemies, they will die in one shot and in an instant. The only enemies that might give you some problems are of course the people that wear helmets. Again, let's start with our specialization. We are running around with the sharpshooter specialization, and why? This will give us some more headshot damage for the marksman rifles and the rifles, and it will give us a little bit more stability and control over the weapons, and that's why we are using this specialization. Then jumping over to my weapons or weapon, this is kinda for you. I like to run around with the Model 700, especially with the Hotshot build. If you hit your shots, you don't have to worry about the reload, as that is the biggest downfall of the Model 700. You know, make sure to put Determined on there. Why? After killing an enemy with a headshot, the next shot landed on any enemy will be a guaranteed headshot. And that's why, in combination with our chest piece talent, we can just keep shooting people wherever in the body and they will die by a headshot. Like I explained, the weapons are a little bit your choice. If you don't hit all your shots, if you don't have faith that you can hit all your shots to get that hot shot refilling your magazine, I would go for the SR1. SR1 is still a very strong weapon as well, and it comes with a mag, so the reload speed will be so much faster. So that's why I'm giving you two options. I prefer the Model 700, but a lot of my community members and other people in the game prefer that SR1. And that's why I showed you 2 different weapons. And again, make sure to roll determined on this. Jumping over to the rest of the build, we are using 2 pieces of Hasbro. This is hands down the best way to make your hotshot build, as this will give us 15% headshot damage and 20% marksman rifle damage. Of course, make sure that you build towards the headshot damage, and then probably weapon handling. I found it with crit chance and headshot damage. I would love to see it with weapon handling instead of crit chance, because the crit chance doesn't matter on this build. We will always shoot that headshot, and in combination with our chest piece talent, we can do so much damage. And then of course make sure to add a headshot mod to these pieces. And then what talent are we talking about? Yes, we're talking about Headhunter. After killing an enemy with a headshot, your next weapon hit within 30 seconds deals an additional 125% of that killing blow's damage. The damage is capped to 800% of your weapon damage, and this is raised to 1250 if your headshot damage is greater than 150%. So make sure that your headshot damage is always greater than 150%, and if you reach that 150, the rest can go into weapon handling. And then jumping over to the other Hasbro piece, and that will be my backpack. This will activate that extra 20% marksman rifle damage. Again, go for weapon handling and headshot damage. I didn't find it with weapon handling and headshot damage. I found it with critical hit damage, what doesn't really help us out here. So the perfect backpack you want to find is headshot damage and weapon handling. Again, of course, make sure to add a headshot damage mod to that. And I chose to go for vigilance, increase total weapon damage by 25%, taking damage, disable this buff for 4 seconds. But you can also go for example, Bloodsucker. This build is strong enough to start with a red bar or a purple bar for that headshot to activate this whole build to shoot then headshots wherever in the body. So it can still work with Bloodsucker if you feel like your survivability is not on point. But again, that hotshot will give you some extra survivability as well if you keep hitting your shots. So let's jump over to that hotshot, because those are the other pieces on the build. You don't need to go for the backpack, you don't need to go for the chest piece. That will only nerf yourself on a hotshot build. Why are we using hotshot? Marksman rifle damage, weapon handling, headshot damage for the first 3 pieces, and then of course we are activating headache with that 4 piece. First headshot with the MR will increase your next headshot by 20%. Second consecutive headshot with an MR will give you 10% armor. If at full armor, it will give you 50% bonus armor extra from your current armor value, and the third consecutive headshot will refill your magazine. And that's why we are using hotshot. This will give us some extra survivability with that 10% armor on kill, or that 50% bonus armor of your armor if you are at max armor. And of course, this raises our damage with that 20%. And it will reload our magazine. So that's why I'm playing with Vigilance, and that's why I'm playing with the Model 700, as it will still give us some extra survivability and it will reload our magazine. For this, we of course want to go all into headshot damage or into weapon handling, whatever you prefer. But again, make sure to add that headshot damage mod to any piece that can hold mods. For our holster, we went for weapon handling. For our knee pads, we went for headshot damage. And for our gloves, we went for weapon handling as well. And that will bring us to a total of 251% headshot damage. And we are gaining an extra 84% accuracy and almost 80% stability throughout, of course, our weapon handling and all the other boosts that we put on this build. That's why it's very, very easy to hit your shots. You don't have to shoot every headshot, and that's the beautiful thing about this build, and that's the tip that I can give you about this build. Walk in and make sure that you find your red bar or even your purple bar if you're running around with vigilance. Start that headshot on them and then start shooting the rest. If you encounter somebody with a helmet, for example a biggie, make sure to shoot that biggie. His helmet will explode first, and then pick one of the other enemies still alive, preferably a red or a purple bar, so you can insta headshot them, switch back to that biggie, and you will take him out in that second shot instantly. That will be my tip if you encounter people with a helmet. Even if you're finding the hyenas and you get pushed, you can just shoot that hyena. His helmet will explode, but he will stumble a little bit as well. This is your moment to then aim at his head, take him out, to then activate that whole sequence from the hot shot and the determined combination. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it. A little bit longer video, but I of course showcase the top 3 league builds that you want to go for. These are, in my humble opinion, the top 3 league builds. There are a bunch of them out there as well. For example, the headshot builds with the pistol, with the Regulus, for example. There are a bunch of them, but I feel like these 3 builds are the easiest for everybody to use. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about these 3 builds. And of course, this is my humble opinion. So what are you using to run through the leagues? Do you have a different build that you like? Do you have another build that you think that should be in this top 3? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to talk to you about it. But that's it for me. Thank you very much for sticking until the end. Like the video if you liked the video or helped you out in any way or form. And of course, if you're new here and or you want to be updated about the Division 2, the Division Universe and the future Division 3, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. And I will see you in the next one. PurePrime out.